Welcome to the continued version of this video. This is not the end, so don't quote me for my other video, that was the last. Alright, we're going to be talking about patterns of wind movement. At the equator, warm air rises and loses its moisture. At 30 degrees, dry air descends, therefore deserts occur at 30 degrees latitude around the world. Because the Earth is rotating on its axis, the trade winds move from the northwest to the west in the northern hemisphere, and from the southeast to the west in the southern hemisphere. Prevailing westerlies. Alright, so prevailing means happening most of the time. So in Canada, we commonly experience winds moving generally from the west to the east. So westerlies means coming from the west. The westerlies moving from the west towards the east. Differences in atmospheric pressure in neighboring regions on the Earth's surface lead to wind. An area of low pressure occurs as warm air expands, becomes less dense, and rises from the surface. On the other hand, an area of high pressure occurs as cold air contracts, becomes denser, and descends from the surface. This movement of air forms convection currents that circulate and distribute heat around the world. Earth has a much larger surface area at the equator than at the poles. In fact, half of the Earth's surface lies between the latitudes of 300 degrees north and 300 degrees south. As the air begins to move toward the poles, it cools, becomes more dense, and begins to sink. It does not travel all the way from the poles to the equator. Convection currents, or any moving objects on the surface of the Earth, tend to veer sideways from their original course due to the Earth's rotation on its axis. This tendency is called the Coriolis effect. Consider a current of air moving from southward from 300 degrees north latitude to the equator. The slower rotational speed of Earth causes the air to fall behind and veer to the west relative to the more rapidly rotating Earth at lower latitudes close to the equator. Here's a way to remember the direction of the motion of the air due to Earth's rotation. Objects moving in the northern hemisphere have a tendency to veer to the right, while objects moving in the southern hemisphere veer to the left. Next, we're going to talk about jet streams. Jet streams are currents of extremely fast-moving air about 10 to 15 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Jet streams form at the boundaries of cold and warm air. They are usually larger in the winter when the temperature difference between cold and warm air masses is greatest. Intense winds within jet streams influence precipitations and thunderstorms. Jet streams travel at speed of 100 to 300 kilometers per hour. Next, we're going to talk about oceans and mountains and how they influence climate. When moist air cools, it cannot hold as much water, and that water condenses and might fall as precipitation. Warm air rises and cool air moves in to replace it. This produces a current of moving air. The current of moving air creates a sea breeze on the shores of oceans and even large lakes, which only occurs in the daytime. When the sun rises, it starts to warm the land and the water. The land warms faster than the water because the water has a larger heat capacity, so it's hard. Let's break it down. Sun rays warm the land faster than they warm the water. Warm air is less dense, so that means it rises. Air over the water is cooler, so cool air is more dense, that means it sinks. Cool air flows towards the land to replace the warm air that has risen. The sea breeze reverses itself to become a land breeze, which only occurs at night. So the sea loses heat more slowly than on land. The air over the sea is warmer. Warm air over the sea rises. Air over land is cooler. Cool air is more dense, and then it sinks. Cool air flows towards the sea to replace the warm air that has risen. As the air moves farther up the mountains, most of that moisture is released as orographic precipitation. This type of precipitation develops when warm, moist air cools and condenses as it rises against mountains. The dry air moves down the eastern side of the mountains. As it does, it becomes warmer because the pressure increases. There's little opportunity for the air to pick up any moisture. Rain occurs only on rare occasions, so it makes a rain shower. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe. or don't. I don't really care.